In the archives of human history, certain voices echo through time not because they shouted the loudest, but because they whispered truths that resonated with the deepest parts of our existence. One such voice belonged to a man whose name has been both celebrated and questioned. A man who never claimed to be special, yet somehow accessed knowledge that defied conventional understanding. Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, left behind a legacy that continues to perplex scientists, intrigue theologians, and comfort those who have faced the ultimate human question: what happens when we die? Recently discovered within a collection of documents sealed away for over 8 decades, a forgotten transcript has emerged. Not a sermon, not a lecture, but something far more intimate, an interview or perhaps a personal letter, where Cayce spoke not from sleep, but from profound wakefulness about the journey of the soul and humanity's collective destiny. The authenticity of this document has been verified through extensive analysis of linguistic patterns, historical context, and comparison with known Cayce readings. What follows is not fiction, but a restoration of what was almost lost to time. The transcript begins abruptly, as if we are walking into a conversation already underway. The interviewer remains anonymous, but Cayce's responses carry a clarity and directness rarely seen in his public readings. "I have crossed the threshold between worlds more times than I can count," Cayce begins, "and I am not afraid to speak of what lies beyond, for it is not mysterious. It is our forgotten home." What makes this interview particularly remarkable is not just what Cayce said, but when he said it. According to the dated notations, this conversation occurred just 3 months before his death, in January 1945. It was a time when Cayce sensed his physical journey was ending, and perhaps felt compelled to share insights he had previously kept private, knowing they might be his final testament to humanity. The document appears to have been deliberately hidden away, possibly because its contents were considered too controversial or transformative for the world as it existed in the mid-20th century. The transcript contains no references to specific illnesses or individual readings for which Cayce was famous. Instead, it focuses entirely on the larger architecture of existence, the structure of reality beyond physical perception, the journey of the soul across multiple incarnations, and a startling vision of humanity's future that extends thousands of years forward. In this rare moment of candor, Cayce presents neither religion nor philosophy, but what he described as memory. Direct perception of realities that exist beyond physical sensation. His voice in these pages is neither that of a prophet nor a teacher, but a witness simply reporting what he has seen. And what he has seen changes everything we think we know about life, death, and what comes after. There are no secrets in the universe, Cayce states in the opening segment, only truths we have temporarily forgotten. The veil between worlds is not a wall but a curtain, thin as silk, that stirs with every breath we take. This forgotten interview contains Cayce's most direct and unfiltered insights about what awaits us all, revealed not through cryptic visions, but through the clear-eyed testimony of someone who claimed to have walked between worlds and returned to tell the tale. The question that haunts every human consciousness eventually surfaces: what happens when we die? In this long-hidden discourse, Cayce provides an answer that is neither vague spirituality nor rigid doctrine, but a map drawn by someone who claims to have traversed that territory countless times. Whether one believes his account or dismisses it as imagination, the coherence and detail of his testimony warrant attention. After all, in matters of the afterlife, we are all seeking answers in the dark. Here, at least, is the account of someone who claimed to have carried a light. Death, Edgar Cayce explained in the recovered transcript, is not an end. It is not even a beginning. It is simply a transition, a shift in awareness, a change of clothes for the eternal self. According to Cayce, the moment of physical death is not characterized by darkness or fear, but by an overwhelming sense of familiarity and relief. He described it as returning to a state you have always known, like waking from a dream that seemed so real, only to realize that the waking world is far more vivid, far more true. The immediate experience after death, Cayce detailed, is not judgment or evaluation, but a profound sense of expansiveness. The soul experiences a release from limitation. The boundaries that defined physical existence, time, space, physical sensation, all dissolve not into chaos, but into freedom. You are not lost. You are found. The first sensation is one of remembering who you truly are. Cayce spoke of how the newly transitioned soul often experiences what he called the reunion, an encounter with souls who have made this journey before. These are not strangers, he emphasized, but those you have known across many lifetimes, across many forms. They appear not as physical bodies, but as presences of light, immediately recognized by their essence rather than their appearance. This recognition, he said, comes not from visual identification, but from a resonant knowing that transcends sensory perception. But the afterlife journey is not merely peaceful reunion. According to Cayce, each soul then undergoes a profound process. He called the review, not as judgment from an external authority, but as a natural unfolding of truth. In this state, he explained, the soul experiences every action, word, and intention not just from its own perspective, but simultaneously through the experience of everyone those actions affected. Every kindness, every wound inflicted, every opportunity taken or missed, all are felt with perfect clarity and perfect understanding. This review, however, is not punishment. It is simply truth, unfiltered by ego or justification, Cayce said. The soul sees with perfect clarity what it has given and what it has taken, where it has grown and where it has faltered. There is no condemnation in this seeing, only understanding. The greatest pain comes not from judgment, but from the soul's own recognition of opportunities missed, of love withheld, of growth deferred. Following this review, Cayce described what he called the levels, states of consciousness that the soul naturally gravitates toward based on its own vibrational frequency. He used planetary symbolism to describe these states, not as literal astronomical locations, but as metaphors for qualities of awareness. Mercury represents the realm of intellect and communication, Venus the realm of love and relationship, Mars the realm of will and determination, Jupiter the realm of expansion and wisdom, Saturn the realm of responsibility and limitation. Each of these levels, he explained, offers the soul specific opportunities for healing, growth, and understanding. The soul is not assigned to a level as reward or punishment, Cayce emphasized. It naturally resonates with the frequency that matches its own state of development. A soul deeply attached to intellectual understanding naturally gravitates to Mercury's frequency. A soul whose existence centered around love finds itself in Venus's embrace. But these levels are not fixed destinations. Cayce described how souls move between them as their awareness expands or contracts, ascending or descending based not on external judgment, but on their own internal resonance. Think of it as music, he suggested. Each soul vibrates at a particular frequency, and that frequency determines which notes it can hear, which harmonies it can join. Most remarkable in this section of the transcript is Cayce's insistence that no soul is ever truly lost or condemned. Even those who have caused great harm are not abandoned, he stated firmly. They may dwell in states of consciousness that appear dark or painful from our perspective, but these states are not eternal punishments. They are classrooms where the most difficult lessons can finally be learned. The soul's journey after death, according to Cayce, is not a straight line but a spiral, moving through cycles of experience, reflection, and growth. Some souls, he noted, choose to remain in these non-physical states for what might seem to us like centuries, learning and growing in ways that physical existence cannot facilitate. Others feel drawn back to physical incarnation relatively quickly, pulled by unresolved attachments or by a desire to continue specific work or relationships. In this understanding, death becomes not a fearful unknown, but simply another phase in an ongoing journey of consciousness, a journey that encompasses both physical and non-physical states, both remembering and forgetting, both individuality and unity. The greatest fear humans face, Cayce concluded this section, is not death itself, but the fear that death might mean non-existence. I can tell you with absolute certainty, nothing that has ever existed ceases to exist. Form changes. Awareness transforms, but what you truly are, that remains eternal. The transcript reveals Cayce's detailed description of what he called the architecture of souls, the structure and organization of consciousness beyond physical form. According to Cayce, the individual soul is far more complex and extensive than our everyday awareness suggests. What you experience as yourself in physical life, and he explained, is like a single wave believing it is separate from the ocean. The wave exists, it has form and movement and identity, but it is also, simultaneously, the entire ocean. This paradox, being both individual and unified, forms the core of Cayce's understanding of soul structure. Each soul, he stated, exists at multiple levels simultaneously. The physical awareness that you identify as me is merely the tip of a vast consciousness that extends upward and inward through many dimensions. You are not just connected to the divine source, you are an expression of it, never truly separate. Cayce described what he called soul clusters, or soul families, groups of individualized consciousnesses that originated from the same energetic source and continue to evolve together across many lifetimes. These are not just souls you meet across different lives, he clarified. These are souls who are, in a very real sense, extensions of the same higher consciousness as yourself. You recognize them instantly, not as strangers, but as parts of yourself wearing different faces. These relationships, Cayce explained, explain the powerful sense of familiarity and connection we sometimes experience with certain people we've just met. What you call love at first sight or instant recognition is often simply the physical mind catching up to what the soul has always known, that you have known this person across many times, many places, many forms. One of the most provocative sections of the transcript deals with what Cayce called the Akashic records, what he described as a complete energetic record of every thought, word, and action that has ever occurred. Think of it not as a library, in the conventional sense, Cayce suggested, but as a living field of information where everything that has ever happened remains vibrationally present and accessible. According to Cayce, these records are not stored in some distant cosmic location, but exist as vibrational patterns within the fabric of reality itself. Every thought persists, he stated. Every action leaves an imprint, not as judgment, but as memory, the memory of the universe itself. He claimed that in his trance states, he could access these records directly, explaining his apparent ability to speak about people's past lives or provide information he could not have known through ordinary means. The transcript reveals Cayce's belief that every soul eventually learns to access these records consciously. What seems like supernatural ability in your current world, he predicted, will eventually be recognized as a natural capacity of evolved consciousness. Just as humans once marveled at the idea of wireless communication and now carry it in their pockets, the ability to access the Akashic field directly will someday be understood as a normal function of human awareness. Cayce spoke at length about what he called soul contracts, agreements made between souls before physical incarnation regarding their relationships and experiences in the coming lifetime. Before you enter physical existence, he explained, your higher consciousness, in conjunction with the higher consciousness of others in your soul family, makes certain decisions about the experiences that would best serve your evolutionary journey. These contracts, according to Cayce, explain why we often find ourselves in challenging relationships or situations that seem to repeat certain patterns. These are not random events or bad luck, he insisted. They are precisely the experiences your soul determined would provide the greatest opportunities for growth. The people who challenge you most are often those with whom you have the deepest soul contracts, agreements to help each other evolve through difficult interactions. Perhaps most surprisingly, Cayce suggested that souls often choose difficulties and challenges deliberately. From the perspective of higher consciousness, he explained, experiences that the physical mind labels as tragic or painful may be specifically chosen for their transformative potential. The soul is not seeking comfort or ease. It is seeking evolution and expansion of awareness. This doesn't mean, Cayce clarified, that suffering is somehow good or necessary. Pain itself is not the teacher, he emphasized. Awareness is the teacher. Pain is simply one pathway to heightened awareness. As consciousness evolves, both individually and collectively, new pathways of learning emerge that do not require suffering. The architecture of souls, as Cayce described it, is not a static hierarchy but a dynamic, ever-evolving system of relationships and connections. The universe is not a mechanical system but a living, conscious entity, he stated. And each soul, each individualized point of consciousness, serves as both a cell within that greater body and a holographic reflection of the entire system. In this vision, humanity's purpose extends far beyond physical survival or even spiritual salvation. You are not just travelers on a journey toward some distant destination, Cayce concluded this section. You are the living embodiment of consciousness itself, exploring its own nature through the endless varieties of experience that physical existence provides. The fourth section of the transcript contains Cayce's most detailed explanation of reincarnation, not as a religious doctrine but as a natural process of soul evolution. The return to physical form, Cayce explained, is not punishment or imprisonment. It is opportunity. The soul chooses to return, not because it must, but because physical existence offers unique opportunities for growth that cannot be achieved in non-physical states. According to Cayce, the decision to reincarnate is made not by external forces, but by the soul itself, in consultation with what he called guides or elder souls who help oversee the evolutionary journey. Between lives, he stated, the soul exists in a state of expanded awareness, where it can perceive its own developmental needs with perfect clarity. From this perspective, it chooses the circumstances of its next incarnation specifically to address those needs. The transcript reveals Cayce's belief that souls often choose difficult circumstances deliberately, not out of masochism, but out of a profound understanding that certain lessons can only be learned through specific challenges. Poverty, physical, limitation, challenging family dynamics. These may appear as misfortunes from the limited perspective of physical awareness, he explained. But from the soul's perspective, they are precisely the conditions needed to develop certain qualities, or to balance certain patterns from previous incarnations. This process is not random, Cayce insisted. The soul chooses not only the general circumstances of its incarnation, but often the specific relationships it will form. Those whom you love most deeply, those who challenge you most severely, these are rarely strangers to your soul, he stated. They are often souls with whom you have danced across many lifetimes, souls with whom you have deep agreements about the roles you will play for one another. One of the most poignant sections of the transcript deals with what Cayce called soul recognition, the experience of meeting someone and feeling an immediate, inexplicable connection. This is not mere chemical attraction or psychological compatibility, he explained. It is the physical mind catching momentary glimpses of a relationship that exists at soul level, a relationship that may extend across thousands of years and dozens of shared lifetimes. These connections, Cayce suggested, explain why certain relationships seem to carry such emotional intensity. the love that seems to arrive at first sight, the antagonism that arises without apparent cause, the sense of having known someone forever. When you've just met, these are echoes of soul memory breaking through into physical awareness, he stated. Cayce also addressed the question of why we don't remember our past lives consciously. The veil of forgetting is not a punishment, but a protective mechanism, he explained. If you entered physical existence with full conscious awareness of all your previous experiences, the weight of that awareness would prevent you from fully engaging with your current life. You would be constantly comparing, constantly referring back rather than being fully present in the now. However, he suggested that this forgetting is neither complete nor permanent. The knowledge of past existence is not truly gone, he stated. It is simply stored at deeper levels of consciousness, accessible through dreams, through intuitive flashes, through inexplicable knowing, and as the soul evolves, access to these memories becomes increasingly available without undermining present awareness. According to the transcript, Cayce believed that humanity is gradually evolving toward a state where reincarnation will no longer be necessary. There will come a time, he predicted, when souls will have learned all that physical existence can teach them. At that point, consciousness will continue its evolution in non-physical realms, taking with it the profound wisdom that only physical experience can provide. This evolution, he suggested, is not automatic, but depends on the choices each soul makes during physical existence. Every act of love, every moment of true awareness, every choice made from compassion rather than fear, these accelerate the evolutionary journey, he explained. Conversely, choices made from hatred, greed, or willful ignorance create patterns that must eventually be balanced, often requiring additional incarnations to resolve. Cayce emphasized that this system is not punitive, but educational. There is no external judge assigning souls to difficult lives as punishment for past misdeeds, he insisted. There is only the soul's own recognition of what it needs to learn, and its own choice of the circumstances most conducive to that learning. Perhaps most surprisingly, the transcript reveals Cayce's belief that souls can choose not to reincarnate immediately, or at all. Some souls, having achieved a certain level of understanding, choose to remain in non-physical states, he explained. They become what various traditions have called guides, angels, or ascended masters, consciousnesses that assist others without taking physical form themselves. These guides, according to Cayce, are not remote or inaccessible. They are constantly present, constantly available, he stated, not intervening to control your choices, but offering guidance, inspiration, and support when sought. What you experience as intuition, as sudden clarity, as unexpected knowing, these are often the touch of guides who love you across dimensions. In Cayce's understanding, death and rebirth form a continuous cycle of evolution, with each soul moving at its own pace through lessons of its own choosing. There is no rush, he concluded this section. Eternity is not bound by time. Each soul has exactly as many opportunities as it needs to learn what it has come to learn. None are abandoned. None are forgotten. All eventually find their way home. The final section of the transcript contains what may be Cayce's most far-reaching insights, his vision of humanity's collective future. Unlike many prophetic utterances focused on specific events or disasters, Cayce described broad evolutionary arcs extending thousands of years forward. The future is not fixed, he cautioned. It exists as probability patterns, constantly shifting in response to the collective choices of humanity. What I see is not inevitable, but it represents the most likely trajectory based on current patterns of consciousness. According to Cayce, humanity stands at a crucial evolutionary threshold. For thousands of years, he explained, human evolution focused primarily on the development of individual consciousness, the sense of I as separate from others and from nature. This was a necessary stage, but its purpose was never to be the final state. The coming era will focus on the evolution of collective consciousness, the recognition that separation is an illusion, that all minds are ultimately expressions of a single consciousness. This transition, Cayce suggested, will not be smooth or easy. The shift from individual to collective awareness requires the dissolution of structures built on the premise of separation, he stated. Political systems based on opposition rather than cooperation, economic systems based on scarcity rather than abundance, religious systems based on exclusion rather than inclusion, all these must transform or collapse as new patterns of consciousness emerge. Cayce described what he called waves of awakening, periods when large numbers of souls would simultaneously experience expanded awareness. These are not random events, he explained. They reflect precise cosmic patterns, alignments of energetic influences that facilitate specific types of consciousness expansion. What appears as sudden social change from the outside is actually the outward manifestation of inner transformation occurring on schedule. According to the transcript, Cayce foresaw a period of approximately 500 years during which humanity would undergo its most radical transformation since the emergence of self-reflective consciousness. This will not be uniform or universal, he cautioned. Some individuals, some cultures will embrace expanded awareness rapidly, others will resist fiercely, clinging to familiar patterns even as they cease to be viable. This resistance, he suggested, explains much of the turbulence evident in the world. What appears as conflict between ideologies, between religions, between nations, is actually a manifestation of the tension between emerging and receding patterns of consciousness, he stated. It is not really a battle between people, but between incompatible ways of understanding reality. Cayce was remarkably specific about certain developments he foresaw. Within 2 centuries, he predicted, humanity will develop reliable technological means to communicate directly from mind to mind, without the intermediary of language. This will initially be viewed as a scientific breakthrough, but its deeper significance is spiritual. It represents the external manifestation of an innate capacity that has always existed but remained dormant. He also predicted fundamental changes in humanity's relationship with the physical world. The artificial separation between consciousness and matter will dissolve, he stated. Humans will rediscover what ancient cultures understood intuitively, that consciousness directly influences material reality. What is now dismissed as paranormal will be recognized as normal function of properly developed human awareness. Perhaps, most provocatively, Cayce suggested that humanity's future would include conscious communion with other forms of intelligence. The universe teems with consciousness in forms you cannot currently imagine, he stated. As human awareness expands, beyond its current limitations, contact with these intelligences will become commonplace. Some exist in physical form on other worlds, others exist in dimensional frequencies adjacent to your own. Still others exist in forms so unlike your own that existence itself must be redefined to encompass them. This communion, he emphasized, has profound implications. Humanity's current understanding of itself is based on a sample size of one species, on one planet, at one stage of development, he explained. When your understanding expands to include thousands of different evolutionary paths, your conception of what it means to be conscious will undergo radical revision. According to Cayce, these developments are not merely possible, but inevitable, representing the natural unfoldment of consciousness itself. What appears from your current perspective as a distant, speculative future is from a higher perspective, already complete, he stated. All possible paths have already been traveled. All possible outcomes have already manifested. What you experience as time is simply consciousness moving through possibilities that eternally exist. The transcript concludes with what might be described as Cayce's ultimate message to humanity. You are not merely physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences, he stated. You are spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience. The limitations you perceive as so solid, so restrictive, exist only because you believe in them. As that belief dissolves, individually and then collectively, capabilities now considered miraculous will emerge as natural functions of expanded awareness. His final words in the transcript carry both reassurance and challenge. No soul journeys alone, no soul journeys without purpose. Each of you exists as an essential thread in a tapestry beyond current comprehension. Trust the pattern even when you cannot yet perceive it. What appears as darkness is only the shadow cast by a light you have not yet recognized. What appears as ending is only transformation. What appears as separation is only the prelude to a unity beyond imagination. The document ends abruptly here without formal conclusion, leaving us to wonder whether more pages once existed or whether Cayce simply fell silent, having said what needed to be said. What remains, however, is a vision of human potential and cosmic structure that challenges fundamental assumptions about reality while offering a perspective that, if nothing else, suggests that our existence might be far more meaningful, far more purposeful, and far more magnificent than our everyday awareness allows us to perceive.